Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. A retired investigator finds peace in the Nevada desert. A relentless HOA president with a hidden agenda targets him with a wild accusation. She claims he stole her Tesla. What follows is a high-stakes game of fraud, betrayal, and one man's fight to protect what's his. I've always said Nevada sunsets look better when you've earned the quiet. After leaving a career crawling under wrecked cars and arguing with insurance lawyers, I figured I deserved a little peace. 4 acres south of Carson City, a sturdy house, a detached workshop, and one holy relic, my 1968 Pontiac GTO. Metallic blue, rebuilt from rust and ghosts. The kind of thing you guard like a family member who actually listens. I never expected the enemy to approach in yoga pants with a clipboard. It was the end of my driveway, the asphalt still warm from the sun. I was rolling my toolbox back to the garage when I heard fast, confident heels on gravel. I turned to see a woman power walking toward me like she was about to reprimand gravity. Blonde bob, sunglasses sharp enough to cut tire rubber, and that one expression every man knows. I've decided you're wrong, and I don't need facts. Are you Gavin Hollis? Her voice had the tone of a person who doesn't question themselves, or anyone else, apparently. That's what my driver's license claims, I said, wiping grease off my hands. She didn't smile. I'm Karen Emberly, the new president of the Silver Rock Cliffs Homeowners Association. She paused like I was supposed to applaud. I didn't. I'll get straight to it. I need you to remove my vehicle from your garage immediately. I blinked once, twice. I even looked around in case there was a second garage I wasn't aware of. Sorry. You're what? My new Tesla, she said, pointing at the closed garage door like she had X-ray vision. It was stolen, and the tracker pinged this location. I assume you've already tried to hide the paperwork. I stared at her, hoping she'd break character and admit this was a prank. But Karen looked dead certain. Ma'am, I said slowly, the only car in there is a very loudly unelectric Pontiac GTO. It burns gasoline, not Wi-Fi. She scoffed. You're restoring stolen property? No. I'm restoring my car, bought legally, registered to me, VIN older than disco. She crossed her arms. I don't think you understand how serious this is. We have community standards here. Cars like that. She waved a dismissive hand. Lower property values. You don't have jurisdiction on this land, I said. I live outside the HOA. Her eyes narrowed like I'd personally questioned the Constitution. We'll see about that. Either the car is coming out, or there will be consequences. I leaned on the fender of my truck, looking her calmly in the eye. You can check every record and registry in Nevada. That car belongs to me. And this garage. Same story. Karen stepped back, tapping something aggressively on her phone. I'm giving you 1 day to do the right thing, she declared. If it's not gone, the authorities will get involved, and you will regret resisting. She spun on her heel, the queen returning to her castle, or more accurately, the overpriced stucco box with a backyard the size of a bathroom. I watched her go, still half expecting a film crew to pop out. No such luck. I sighed, slid the garage door open, and looked at my GTO. She caught the light perfectly. Defiant, unbothered, mine. You heard the lady, I said to the car, patting the hood. Apparently you're a Tesla now. Congratulations. The GTO gleamed back at me like she enjoyed the idea of giving that woman hell. For a brief moment, it was funny. Then I felt the hair rise on the back of my neck. That woman wasn't joking, and people like her don't back down. They escalate. I tightened the new padlock on the garage door that night. Just a precaution, I told myself. But I think I already knew the storm was coming. Morning sun, high desert stillness, and the low hum of a good engine. That's what I expected when I rolled back into my driveway after a quick run into town for some carburetor parts. What I got instead was splintered wood, my garage door hanging open like a jaw dislocated by force, and Karen standing inside it like she owned the goddamn place. She was mid-sentence on a phone call, waving one hand in the air like she was directing traffic. Yes, officer, it's here. The GPS shows it. I'm looking at it right now. The man's name is Gavin Hollis. He's hiding it in his garage. I told you. She turned and finally noticed me. Her face tightened, but I swear to God there was a glint of triumph in her eyes, like she'd finally caught the villain red-handed in some HOA-sponsored crime drama. I didn't say anything, just stared at her. My gate was busted open, a steel bent. The new padlock was nowhere to be found. The GTO sat there, untouched but exposed, like a naked secret dragged into daylight. 2 police cruisers pulled up not a minute later, sirens off but lights flickering red and blue in the corners of my eye. My stomach dropped. I'd been through enough depositions in my time to know perception can kill long before facts catch up. The first officer out was younger, early 30s, clean uniform. The second looked like he'd seen a few things. I walked out slowly, both hands in plain sight. "Afternoon, officers," I said. "Looks like we've got a bit of a misunderstanding." Karen stormed out of the garage, her phone still clutched in her fist like a dagger. "That's him. He's got my Tesla. You have to impound it. Check the VIN." The younger cop looked at me, then at the GTO. He raised an eyebrow. "This the vehicle in question?" "It is not," I said calmly. "That's my Pontiac GTO, 1968. Legally restored, legally owned, legally stored." The older officer stepped toward the car, examining the classic body. He gave a low whistle. "Hell of a machine. Doesn't look much like a Tesla." "Check the VIN," Karen demanded. "He altered it." "I know he did. I tracked my Tesla here." They took photos. I didn't object. I invited them to check the VIN plate, the frame stamp, the dash. I opened the glove compartment, handed them the title, the restoration logs, DMV inspection receipts, even the time-stamped photos from when I found the frame in a junkyard 8 years ago. Karen paced near the sidewalk, calling someone else now, probably a lawyer or her HOA war counsel. The younger officer took the paperwork. The older one stepped aside to make a call, likely to confirm ownership. Meanwhile, I unlocked my phone and pulled up the restoration videos from the shop. Every inch of that car, sandblasting, welding, paint, engine rebuild, I had documented it all. 15 minutes passed in silence, aside from Karen muttering about grand theft and civil action. Eventually, the senior cop came back over. "Mr. Hollis," he said, "your documentation checks out. The VINs match state records. This car's been in your name for years. We don't have any probable cause for seizure." "Thank you," I said, though the knot in my chest didn't ease. "We will, however," he continued, "file an incident report. Since Ms. Emberly made a theft claim, there has to be a preliminary investigation. That means we'll need to photograph the vehicle, garage, and file your statement." I nodded. "Of course, but can I file a report too?" He raised an eyebrow. "She broke in," I said. "Busted my gate, picked or cut the lock. That's forced entry. I've got a camera in the corner up there. Might have caught her in the act." Karen's face paled for the first time. "I had probable cause. GPS data led me here. I was retrieving stolen property." "In someone else's locked garage?" I asked, my voice dry as Nevada brush. "With no warrant?" The cops exchanged glances. "We'll need to review the footage," the older one said. Karen suddenly grew very quiet. They collected everything, thanked me for my cooperation, and left with a promise to follow up after the footage review. Karen, seeing the game turning, tried to slip away. "Don't touch my gate on the way out," I called to her. She paused just long enough to glare, then marched off down the street like the wronged party in a soap opera. I closed the garage door, replaced the lock, again, and leaned my head against the cool metal. I'd handled theft investigations for years. I'd seen fraud, fake VINs, even VIN swaps with acid and grinders. But this was personal, calculated, someone trying to rewrite reality with confidence and a straight face. And I wasn't about to let them. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was scared. I've dealt with worse in my old line of work, but because something about the whole thing stank worse than a burning clutch. You don't just accidentally barge into someone's locked garage and call 911 unless you're either an idiot or you've got something to gain. Karen didn't strike me as the first kind. By dawn, I had coffee in my thermos and a list forming in my head. I started with the security footage. I'd installed a discrete camera in the upper corner of the garage last year, mostly to keep an eye on my tools. It wasn't fancy, but it fed to a cloud archive and time-stamped everything. There she was, 4:30 a.m., flashlight in hand, bolt cutters in the other. Calm, efficient, like she'd done it before. The camera caught her glancing up just once, then back to work on the lock. She was in the garage by 4:40. 20 minutes later, headlights showed up. The cops she'd called, already en route. I downloaded the footage to an external drive and labeled it Karen Break-In Final Do Not Delete. Then I called a friend of mine, Dean Harper, former VIN inspector, now semi-retired and very bored. He owed me a few favors from our insurance days, and I knew he couldn't resist a puzzle. Got a VIN problem brewing, I told him. Potential GPS spoof and ID fraud. You in? Hell yes, he said. I was getting bored of retirement and daytime TV. We met at the shop by 10. I handed him the full documentation for the GTO, including the original purchase slip from a salvage yard in rural Oregon. Dean looked it over, nodding slowly. No way this is a Tesla, he muttered. But let's assume she's not completely insane. Show me the GPS. I'd already pulled up the footage from the responding officer's visit. Karen had kept shouting about GPS. She'd said the tracker showed her Tesla was here. I'd ignored it at the time because, well, I know what car I own. But now I started to think, what if the GPS didn't lie? What if someone made it lie? I dug deeper. There's a module in most newer Teslas, a remote telematics chip that constantly logs location data. I knew how to spoof one, and more importantly, I knew how someone like Karen with her DMV background could too. We pulled open some old databases, digging through known VIN swaps and registry glitches. I had a hunch, and not the kind you get from reading Reddit comments. Something told me Karen wasn't just acting out of petty HOA rage. She had tools. I called the DMV, not the public line, but a back-channel contact in Carson City who used to help with VIN disputes. I gave him the number Karen had shouted at the cops. He ran it. It's active, he said. But here's the weird part. The VIN you gave me is registered to a Tesla and also to a 1968 Pontiac GTO. 2 entries, same VIN. One is historical, one's brand new. That's when the gears clicked into place. Karen had submitted a forged VIN registration using my car's identity, or one very close to it, a duplicate record, enough to trick a tracker or a casual check. But not someone like me. Dean exhaled through his teeth. That's advanced fraud, not backyard shady. This is inside job level. Or ex-inside, I said. Karen used to work with a firm contracted by DMV. She'd have access to old forms, templates, maybe even access codes. Dean looked up. You think she's setting you up? I think she already did. That afternoon, I drove to the HOA office under the pretense of asking for a public copy of their jurisdiction map. I didn't need it. I already knew they had no claim on my land, but I wanted to see her again, face to face. Karen was in the lobby talking to 2 other HOA board members. She looked up and smiled. Not friendly. More like a poker player seeing someone draw the wrong card. Mr. Hollis, she said, syrupy. How can we help? Oh, just checking if my garage is still considered community property, I said, eyes locked on hers. Her smile didn't twitch. I trust everything's been resolved with the police. Not quite. GPS records still need explaining. VIN duplications, too. Strange how your Tesla vanished and reappeared near me, huh? She shrugged. GPS isn't perfect. Could have been an error. Or a setup. Her gaze sharpened for a split second, just enough to confirm what I already knew. Then she turned back to her colleagues. I left without another word. No need. I had enough puzzle pieces now to build a picture. This wasn't about a misunderstanding. This was a goddamn chess game, and I just saw her hand. There's a moment in every con job where the trickster overplays their hand. Karen had staged the perfect neighborhood drama. Respectable woman claims her Tesla is stolen, tracks it to my property, calls the cops, stirs up enough dust to make me look guilty. But like any good fraud, it was built on a rotten frame. The VIN duplication had cracks. The GPS ping was too convenient. And I wasn't some wide-eyed retiree who'd fold under pressure, but even I didn't expect what came next. It was 3 days later. I was working late in the shop, patching some exhaust lines, when I got a notification on my phone. Motion detected. Garage camera. Not unusual. A raccoon, maybe a neighbor's cat looking for shelter. But when I pulled up the footage, I saw headlights. Bright, full beams cutting through the dark. Then, the unmistakable whine of electric motors. A vehicle rolled into the garage. Not the GTO. That was safely locked behind me in the workshop. This was a Tesla. I dropped the wrench and sprinted outside, heart pounding. Sure enough, the garage door was hanging open. My fresh padlock, cut clean. Inside, next to a stack of oil drums and a row of boxed parts, sat a midnight blue Model S. Still cooling, brakes ticking softly in the silence. For a second, my brain refused to process it. It was here. An actual Tesla, not a tracker blip. Not a clerical error, a whole goddamn car. I circled it slowly. Nevada plates, temporary registration, no driver, no keys. The interior lights were still on, like it had just been parked. And based on the fresh tire marks at the threshold and the heat from the hood, it had been driven here minutes ago. I didn't touch it. I backed out, locked the workshop behind me, and called the sheriff's department. This time, they came with a different attitude. Karen showed up before they finished their sweep, which didn't surprise me. What did surprise me was the look on her face. Not smugness this time, but practiced shock. "What is going on?" she gasped, hands to her chest like some HOA Scarlett O'Hara. That's my car." The deputy raised a brow. "You reported this stolen over a week ago." "Yes, and now it's magically back, right here. This proves everything. He had it hidden." I didn't say a word, just gestured to the camera above the garage door. "I've got footage. You're going to want to see the delivery method." The deputy nodded. One of the officers took a statement. Meanwhile, I watched Karen drift near the Tesla like it was a long-lost lover. She didn't even ask how it got there. Didn't question why the locks were destroyed. Again. That told me everything. The footage was clearer than I'd hoped. Around 2:30 a.m., a dark SUV pulled up. Two figures in hoodies emerged. One held bolt cutters, the other drove the Tesla. No headlights, no plates, windows tinted so dark it looked illegal even in Vegas. They wheeled it in, fast, surgical, and gone within 3 minutes. It wasn't just a drop-off, it was a goddamn frame job. I burned the footage to 3 drives and emailed a copy to Dean. Then I called the DMV investigator I'd spoken to earlier and gave him the registration number off the Tesla's plates. "You're not going to like this," he said 10 minutes later. "The car is registered, temporarily, to a shell company out of Utah, listed as Vehicle Storage Management, but the address doesn't exist. And the owner on record, redacted due to pending investigation." Pending investigation. Now we were cooking. I spent the rest of the day gathering every receipt, video, and screenshot I had. Then I called a lawyer, not just any lawyer, my lawyer, the one I used when an insurance fraud ring tried to sue me into silence 6 years back. Her name's Valerie Ross. She's like a buzzsaw in a pantsuit, and she doesn't take kindly to threats. When I explained the situation, she let out a slow whistle. "You're telling me this woman planted a stolen car in your garage while actively accusing you of stealing it?" "Not just planted it," I said. "She faked the VIN match, faked GPS records, maybe more." "Okay," she said. "First thing we do is file an injunction. No further action by HOA or law enforcement touching your property until we clear this mess. Second, we push forensics on that Tesla. VIN engraving, registry trail, data logs. If it was in a trailer before last night, the brake system will know." Also, I added, someone on the HOA board gave her access. The garage code was reset remotely. My land's not part of their jurisdiction, but their software still had my gate in its legacy registry from the development plan. Someone gave her the tools. Valerie paused. "So we're not just dealing with a lunatic HOA president. We're looking at conspiracy, possibly interstate fraud." "Yep," I said, "and I've got the receipts." She chuckled darkly. "Then let's get to work." By nightfall, I'd set up a new off-grid surveillance system backed up to 3 cloud locations. Valerie had filed 2 motions, one for property protection, one for cease and desist. And Dean? He'd already tracked down a former co-worker of Karen's from her DMV contractor days. Apparently, she wasn't just known for being efficient. She was known for shortcuts, for bending process, and more than once for quietly misplacing titles that later turned up under different owners. I stared at the Tesla in my garage that night, sitting like a goddamn Trojan horse. This wasn't just HOA politics anymore. This was war. You don't go after someone like Karen with a Facebook post and a stern letter. You need evidence. Chain of custody, signatures, timestamps, people who speak in court and don't blink under cross-examination. You need to come with firepower, legal, technical, and psychological, so I stopped being reactive and went on the offensive. First, I hired a private digital forensics firm out of Reno, small team, all ex-cybercrime unit. They took the Tesla's onboard computer apart virtually, mapping every location, software update, and GPS blip since it left Utah. What they found was exactly what I suspected. The car had been dormant in a private garage for over a week. No movement. No ignition. Then, the night before, it magically appeared in my garage. It was transported, not driven, for over 200 miles at a consistent 60 miles per hour with no power draw. no regenerative braking, and no onboard video recording. In short, it had been hauled on a flatbed. Karen didn't just make a mistake, she staged a goddamn production. Meanwhile, Valerie was on a warpath. She filed a civil lawsuit against Karen Emberly personally, not through the HOA. 4 counts: 1. Malicious false reporting to law enforcement; 2. Trespassing and unlawful entry; 3. Property damage; 4. Defamation with intent to cause reputational and financial harm. We attached a demand for $160,000 in damages, legal fees, cost of property repair, emotional distress, and business interruption. My shop had been shut down for 4 days. That was money lost, but that was just the opening salvo. I gave the footage of the nighttime drop-off to the sheriff's department. I gave the DVR logs to the DA. Then I called in a favor from a friend at the state DMV, a woman named Nadine who'd been auditing VIN anomalies for nearly a decade. When I gave her Karen's name, there was a pause. "I remember her," she said flatly. "She used to cut corners with title verifications, worked for one of those third-party processors, right?" "Exactly," I said. "I think she duplicated a VIN to stage a fake theft." Nadine went quiet for a beat. "You might be right. I'll pull her old access logs and check the submission times." 2 days later, Nadine called me back, tone clipped and focused. "Got it," she said. She filed a temporary registration request for a Tesla under the VIN tied to your GTO, with a metadata timestamp 2 hours before she reported it stolen. And here's the kicker. She used a form template that's been restricted since 2019. Only DMV employees or approved vendors would have that. That was gold. Dean, meanwhile, tracked down a former coworker of Karen's, a guy named Ron, who'd worked with her at the vehicle transfer firm. We met him at a diner off Route 50. He showed up wearing a cap pulled low and looking like he'd just left witness protection. She knew all the angles, Ron said. Used to brag that she could make a car disappear and reappear in 3 different states without breaking a sweat. "Ever see her do it?" Dean asked. Ron nodded. "Once, early 2022. Some BMW leaseback. She stored it in Vegas, then it popped up in Oregon 6 months later with a new title and fake auction record. Ever confront her?" He shook his head. "No one did. She had people wrapped around her finger. You didn't cross Karen. She always had dirt on somebody. Now she had a lawsuit and, soon, possibly felony charges. Valerie drafted a motion to subpoena HOA internal communications. And that's when we struck oil. Buried in the HOA Slack archive, which we acquired through a court-ordered preservation request, was a thread titled Problem Neighbors. Karen had posted in it over a month earlier before she'd ever spoken to me. "He's got no HOA protection. If we pressure him hard enough, he'll either sell or screw up. Let's box him in." Another message, 1 week before the break-in. "Planning a little wake-up call this weekend. He'll wish he was renting." And then, 3 days before the Tesla appeared in my garage, tick-tock, time to put on a show. That wasn't HOA enforcement. That was malice. We submitted everything to the court. The forged documents, the video of the midnight Tesla drop-off, the GPS logs, the DMV metadata, the Slack messages. Valerie compiled it all into a blistering motion for immediate protective order and early trial scheduling. The judge, after reading our filing, granted both. And still, Karen had the nerve to walk around the neighborhood like she was the goddamn queen of civility. That night, I replaced the entire garage door and upgraded the surveillance system to real-time cloud sync with tripwire motion sensors. Then I put up a new sign on the fence. "Not for sale, not yours. Still here." I knew the legal battle wasn't over yet. Karen would throw everything she had at stalling, spinning, and shifting blame. But now the story had changed. She wasn't the accuser anymore. She was the defendant. I always figured that once I had the truth and the evidence, things would settle. You know, truth prevails, justice rolls in on steel wheels, and the bad guy takes a plea deal in a dim courtroom somewhere. But Karen wasn't the kind of opponent who folded when cornered. No, she doubled down. 2 days after our lawsuit landed, I got served. Not a counterclaim, not a denial, an outright suit against me for vehicle theft, property invasion, intentional emotional distress, and, my personal favorite, harassment of an HOA officer. She had filed it pro se, no lawyer attached, just pages of incoherent accusations, fake screenshots, and wildly doctored logs that looked like they were pulled from a mid-2000s Excel spreadsheet. She claimed I'd hacked her GPS tracker, cloned her Tesla's key fob, and terrorized her via electronic warfare. There was even a photo of a Tesla parked in a different driveway with my address photoshopped into the background so poorly it still had someone else's mailbox. It would have been funny if it wasn't so dangerous. Valerie took one look at it and rolled her eyes. She's panicking. That's a desperation move, trying to muddy the waters, hoping the court sees this as a messy neighbor dispute instead of what it is, calculated fraud. We filed for immediate dismissal with prejudice, attaching a point-by-point breakdown of every lie and forged exhibit. But Karen wasn't done. That same week, she started showing up in the neighborhood more aggressively, clipboard in hand, knocking on doors. It didn't take long to figure out what she was doing. She was canvassing for witnesses. One of my neighbors, Jeff, 2 doors down, caught her trying to convince his wife to sign a statement that she'd seen me driving a Tesla into my garage at night. Jeff kicked her off their lawn. Another neighbor, Maria, said Karen offered to reduce her HOA dues if she cooperated. It was pure manipulation, and it backfired. Word got around. People started reaching out to me. Folks I barely knew before were forwarding HOA emails, internal memos, and even text threads where Karen bragged about tightening the screws on the freeloader in the ugly garage house. I compiled everything. Valerie submitted it as supplemental material to our case, framing it as a pattern of harassment and intimidation. But the real nail in the coffin came the following week. Dean called me late one night. "Gav," he said, "I just got something big." He'd been digging through vehicle import records tied to Karen's shell company in Utah, the one that temporarily registered the Tesla. Most of the documents were intentionally vague, but one file slipped through the cracks. It was a vehicle transfer form with Karen's signature, assigning custody of the same Tesla to a man named Paul Hendricks. I didn't recognize the name. Dean did. He's a part-time mechanic and contractor. Worked with Karen when she was moving cars across state lines for that auction ring. Low-profile guy, but not clean. We tracked down a business license that listed him as a co-signer on a now-dissolved vehicle storage firm in Salt Lake. The address on the form, same as the Tesla's last known GPS ping before it magically appeared in my garage. We handed it all over to the DA. Within 72 hours, Paul Hendricks was arrested during a traffic stop in Mesquite. In his van, VIN stamping tools, blank title forms, and a burner phone with messages between him and, you guessed it, Karen Emberly. Midnight drop still on. Yes, cut power to gate first. No headlights. Got it. Use templates. That was it. Game over. The DA informed us they were preparing criminal charges, real ones, felony false reporting, conspiracy to commit fraud, destruction of property, DMV document tampering, and trespassing. And Karen? She still walked the neighborhood like she ran it, still smiled at people, still held HOA meetings with no hint of shame, but you could see it, the cracks. Fewer people showed up. Her allies started ghosting her. Someone spray-painted "Owned by GTU" on the sidewalk outside the clubhouse. Petty, sure, but satisfying. I kept my head down, waiting for the criminal indictment to be unsealed. Valerie advised against provoking her. Let her hang herself with her own rope, she said. We've already wired the noose. Still, I reinforced the garage. New steel doors, a fresh camera network, backup power, biometric lock. Nobody was putting another goddamn car in there without my say-so. I also started documenting everything obsessively. Receipts, gate logs, cloud sync confirmations, audio backups. Because I knew we were getting close, and I knew Karen would try one last move. They always do. The criminal indictment hit just after sunrise on a Monday. I was tightening a valve cover on an old Mercury when my phone lit up. Valerie's name. No pleasantries. Just 3 words. It's happening today. By noon, the Carson City District Attorney's Office held a press conference. Karen Emberly was formally charged with 4 felony counts: criminal trespass, filing a false police report, fraud involving Department of Motor Vehicles documents, and conspiracy to commit property crime. They also announced an active investigation into an unauthorized network of vehicle title transfers spanning multiple states. That part was the kill shot. Because for the first time, Karen wasn't just a petty tyrant with a clipboard. She was the center of a criminal operation. They arrested her that afternoon. Black SUV, plainclothes officers, calm and methodical. I watched from my front porch as they pulled up in front of her pastel-colored suburban fortress. Karen walked out stiff-backed, lips tight, not a hair out of place, handcuffed in broad daylight. No shouting, no struggle, just pure, surgical justice. I didn't cheer, I didn't gloat, but I did take a deep breath, the first real one in weeks. That evening, a neighborhood-wide email went out. Not from the HOA board, but from a collective group of homeowners, several of whom had once backed Karen's rise. It was a petition to hold an emergency recall vote for HOA president. They didn't even wait for quorum. Within 48 hours, she was voted out, unanimously. One guy even brought champagne to the mailbox station. I didn't drink with them, but I did accept a bottle. Figured I'd save it for the real finale. Court prep started fast. Valerie worked with the DA's office to align our civil suit with the criminal timeline. Turns out when your adversary is facing jail time, civil discovery moves a lot quicker. Depositions were scheduled within days. Karen's public defender, yes, she'd already burned through her original lawyer, tried to delay, citing mental exhaustion and media pressure. The judge wasn't having it. The evidence was overwhelming. The DA had VIN matches, GPS metadata, burner phone records, video of the garage drop, sworn statements from Ron and Dean, and the Slack messages from the HOA chat, which frankly read like the manifesto of a suburban dictator. Then came the kicker. We got a match on one of the fingerprints found on the Tesla's driver's side door. It wasn't Karen's. It belonged to a man named Marcus Lyle, former HOA security volunteer and the same guy who installed the original neighborhood gate access system back in 2017. Turns out he still had remote access. And surveillance footage showed him parked across the street on the night the Tesla was dumped in my garage. The conspiracy wasn't just Karen and Paul Hendricks. There was an inner circle. That revelation shook the case wide open. The DA's office filed additional charges against both Marcus and Paul and began interviewing HOA board members. Rumors spread like wildfire. Allegations of forged fines, blackmail over code violations, backdoor property flips. The HOA, once smug and untouchable, suddenly resembled a crumbling crime family. Karen pled not guilty at arraignment. No plea deal. She stood in court in a pale gray suit, trying to hold on to whatever image of control she had left. Her hands shook when they listed the charges. The judge set her bail at $500,000. She didn't post it. She was taken back into custody. Meanwhile, Valerie moved our civil case forward like a freight train. With Karen locked up, her assets frozen, and her allies scattering, there wasn't much resistance left. The court ruled in our favor on every count of the initial motion. The judge ordered a forensic audit of her finances, immediate restriction of any further HOA administrative action from her camp, and scheduled the trial date. But the most poetic moment came 2 days later. I received an envelope in the mail, certified. Inside was an unsigned letter typed on unmarked paper. I was part of it. I didn't know how far she'd go. We thought you'd just move, that you'd get tired and sell. I'm sorry. No name, no return address, but I knew. Somewhere in that HOA boardroom, someone had finally grown a conscience. I installed motion sensor spotlights on every corner of the house, not out of fear, out of protocol. You don't go through something like this and come out trusting sunshine and small talk again right away. But I also reopened the garage, not just unlocked it, opened it wide, parked the GTO right at the front. No more hiding. No more silence. And for the first time since this whole circus began, I slept with both eyes closed. The courtroom was cool and sharp, like the inside of a surgical theater. Beige walls, heavy wood benches, the faint buzz of fluorescent lights. And in the air, that smell, not sweat, not fear, tension. Karen sat across the room in a beige jumpsuit, the irony of the color not lost on me. Her face was thinner now. She wasn't smiling anymore. Not at me, not at the jury, not even at the DA who'd once offered her a plea deal she spat on. This was her reckoning. Testimony started with the easy stuff, the timeline, the VIN match, the fake GPS ping. The deputy who first responded to her 911 call described the scene. My garage, intact, no Tesla, and her screaming about stolen property. The footage I'd provided, her breaking in, the silent drop-off of the midnight Tesla, played like a bad heist movie. She didn't flinch when the screen showed her cutting the gate lock. But she did when they brought in Paul Hendricks. He'd taken a deal, testified in exchange for a reduced sentence. Under oath, Paul explained the whole plan. Karen had hired him to recover a personal vehicle for insurance leverage. When he realized it was a setup, she doubled the pay. He used burner phones, swapped VIN plates with her templates, and arranged the late-night drop. Then came the bombshell. Karen had orchestrated similar schemes before. Low-level property setups, vehicle misreporting, HOA pressure campaigns to force unwanted homeowners to sell. Paul named dates, gave names, produced screenshots, and then the kicker. The prosecution introduced the HOA Slack logs in full. Every smug message, every veiled threat, every declaration of intent to corner the non-compliant. She wasn't just targeting me. She was trying to build a legacy of control. When Valerie took the floor for the civil portion, she didn't hold back. She painted the picture clearly. I was targeted not because I broke rules, but because I lived outside of them. That my independence was an offense to Karen's need for dominance. And when subtle pressure didn't work, she escalated into fraud, invasion, destruction, and perjury. Karen's defense team tried everything. They claimed she was manipulated by Hendricks. They blamed a mental health episode. They argued she never intended harm. But intent was burned into every message she wrote, every step she took, every lie she stitched into a legal web meant to strangle me. The jury took 4 hours, guilty on all counts. Sentencing was swift, 9 years, with eligibility for parole after 6. Financial penalties of $160,000, covering legal fees, property repairs, and damages for emotional distress. And just like that, the war was over. But the story wasn't. The fallout was nuclear. HOA meetings became ghost towns. The board collapsed within a month, 3 resignations back to back. A county investigation opened into their financial practices. Homeowners who once cheered Karen's leadership now kept their heads down, embarrassed to admit they ever backed her. Some even stopped by. Quiet visits, murmured apologies. A couple offered to help repair the gate. One woman baked me a pie. I appreciated the gestures, didn't need them, but I appreciated them. As for me, I went back to work, fixed up a 71st Firebird with a busted camshaft, helped a single mom from the next county repair her Subaru at cost. Life, the real kind, slowly resumed. But I made one change. Above the new steel door of my garage, I hung a polished metal plaque. Simple, bold lettering. This garage is not for sale, not yours, not ever. Trespassers will be prosecuted. Again. A little dramatic? Maybe. But the neighborhood needed a reminder. A reminder that even here, in cul-de-sac country where pastel houses and manicured lawns pretend to promise peace, some of us still believe in property rights, privacy, and the right to build a life without permission. And sometimes, you've got to fight like hell to keep it.